Running sentences present a judge, a jury, and a sheriff. Part 9. The Juror. Carter Willows, freshly escaped from the hospital, fears for his life, so he continues to run, seeking help wherever he may find it, though he doesn't seem to find much. This story is written and narrated by Michael Honoré. This story is a work of fiction. Any names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, real situation, real events, and or characters is purely coincidental. This is black satire and not meant to be taken seriously. Copyright 2023, Michael Honoré. All rights reserved. Carter scampered his way out the back exit of the hospital, which had the emergency exit sign above it. He waited for an alarm to go off, but thankfully it didn't set off any alarms as he hurried his way out, heading past rows and rows of cars that were in this parking lot. Never tell anyone anything. Damn it! Haven't I learned that lesson yet? He hurried to a large SUV to hide behind it, and which would provide him some sight line at the hospital itself, which he kept glancing towards. There were a few guards who came out and looked around, but none ventured far into the parking lot beyond the building. And then the loudspeaker crackled live. The patient known as Carter Williams has left the premises. I repeat, the patient has left the building. The guards then disappeared, and after that there were no more that would appear to be searching parties coming looking around for him, to his relief. He didn't wait around, though, and hurried towards the road not far off. 20 minutes of hitchhiking, then nary a car was passing by, and it was getting exhausting to just look up and down the road to see if any was coming. The hospital was located a ways away from things in a central location for the surrounding area, but empty of anything aside from the hospital, and it made a pain to actually get to it. Carter was mostly used to this, hiking along the road, looking out for any signs of cars, both friendly and unfriendly. He dealt with more mean ones than kind ones, and it made him watch his back constantly. There were more miles to go, and it would take more time than he cared to think about to get to town. The Welcome to the Bayou Incorporated area sign he passed was not as welcoming as he would have liked as he continued his long journey towards town. The afternoon had become early evening, and now the only good thing about this was that he could now clearly see the two nearby towns, with one across an expanse of river, which meant crossing a bridge that didn't have any sidewalks. He chose the town nearest to him as the truck slowed to a stop not far away from him. With great reluctance, Carter made his way towards it, regarding it carefully and expecting the worst. The passenger side window came down as he got close to it, and then as he stopped to look at the redneck inside the vehicle. Evening? Hi, you didn't need to stop. The town is right there. I think I did, since you looked so lonely out there. Carter took a step to go past the car, but heard the click of a noise. He turned to look over at the man. Are you threatening me, sir? No, there's someone who would like to meet you, though, if you don't mind. Who is wanting to meet with me, and who knows of me? Now he could clearly see the pistol in the man's lap, pointed towards him. It's a Dane Carver. I doubt the likes you know him, but he wishes to know more about you, so, be a good boy. Who and why? Carver Dane works for the state police as a private detective or some such thing. He hired me to find people for him. He said something about investigating a murder and a judge and so on, or something. I don't really know. Somebody was murdered? None of it's my business. Get in the truck, though. What's that got to do with me? The gun now fully came up as the driver was exasperated with the uncooperative Carter. I don't know, since I'm just the person who fetches people. They don't tell me what's going on. Are you going to cooperate, or do I have to get dirty? No, I don't think I want to. You want to die on the side of the road. That's the fate that comes to those who say no. Trust me, I saw a young lady who learned that lesson real quick. Worked at the diner or something. The answer to that was not what Carter wanted to hear at all. He rather liked the idea of living to see a few more days anyway. His hand reached slowly for the door handle. You got any promises you won't shoot me? Sure, I promise not to shoot you. This seemed to be about all he was going to get out of this, so he opened the door and clambered inside. It would take them a little while to get out to the run-down motel not far from the highway. For some reason, this driver took them the long ways around and out of town to get here. Carter wasn't sure if he was trying to confuse him or not. It didn't work, but there was some reason for it, but he wasn't getting it. The man pulled into the parking space and the two of them got out of the vehicle. Up on the second floor, third room on your right. That'll be the one you want. Aren't you gonna show me the door? I'm following to make sure you go up where you're wanted, but that's about all I'm doing. Carter eyed the man, but moved towards the stairs because the gun was still pointed at him, so he offered no to little resistance. His mind was trying to move fast and come up with a way to get out of this, but with that gun pointed towards him. Up on the walkway to the second story, leading to the rooms, Carter took a moment to look to his left and right. The place was not nice looking, and it had dirt and grime all over the place. He was familiar with this place, though, having stayed here a few times over the past few years for months on end, when the situation called for it and the money was right. He didn't like being back here and turned to his right, just in time to see the third door down close as a familiar-looking face came out of it. And she came hurrying down the walkway, which was a troublesome thing since there was little room and only one person really could be walking on it at any time. Carter stood mostly in the way as she was approaching, and he decided he was going to try and stay in place as she came up. Excuse me, if you will. Sure, no problem. He stood to the side as she passed by and disappeared down the stairs, although she skirted well past the gunman who followed him up. It was then that he figured she reminded him of that waitress from the all-night diner. He couldn't put a name to her, though, but Keep going. I was. No need to rush me. He glared back at the man, who still had the gun pointed at him, and openly so. There was no hiding it. Still not thinking it was worth risking, he moved towards that third door, and when he got to it, he simply knocked on it. You can go, Roddy. No worry about waiting to be allowed to enter. So with a shrug, Carter twisted the door handle and opened it. The room smelled of cigarette or cigar smoke with a noxious cloud of the stuff sitting in the middle of this space, not going anywhere. Carter waved his hand in front of his face to get some of it to move away. There was a man sitting on the bed, smoking a cigar, studying him rather heavily, and was surrounded by manila folders that had papers spread all about it. You sent for me. Maybe. Carter waved his hand a bit harder to make sure the smoke really was moving away. It gave him something to do as he thought about this. Your lapdog said you wanted to see me, and he pointed a gun at me. If you don't have anything you want to talk about, I will gladly leave. Do sit. We have some things to talk about, mostly related to the murder case you were a jury member on, if you don't mind. Carefully, Carter regarded the man and moved towards the single chair in the room. He would sit down, but he kept himself tensed up, ready for anything and ready to bolt. There were no weapons that he could see, but that didn't mean that there weren't any there. I tried talking to many people about such a case, and no one seems to want to listen. Why do you want to talk about it? As you know, there's a judge in the eye, Percy. He died, and his father was a part of that murder case, and the police have come across that part of the story and wish to make connections or see if any such things exist. Carter winced, trying to forget the case and everything about it, but it was still there, sharp in his mind. There were no connections as far as I am aware. If anyone talks about that case, they wind up dead, and I don't know why, and I do not want to wind up dead. So, if you'll excuse me, give me a guess as to why you think there are no connections between you and this case and DePercy and the murder of DePercy. The judge has his fingerprints all over that case and how the ruling should have been handed down by the foreman of the jury. I don't know why any of it happened. I don't know the connections. I'm not responsible for any connections. All I know is after that, any whispers about the case were silenced and people vanished. Things were meant to be kept quiet, and I don't know why. So the connections, if they're there, don't go through me. The murder case where Malcolm DePercy wound up murdering a former associate of his after he lost the lawsuit of Dawn versus Dawn. The two of them helped build the local hospital together and then sued the state together. All files for it have gone missing, and yet the murder judge had some of those files wound up in the police possession after his murder. I'm sorry, Dane Carter is what your name is? I only know what happened during the case. Anything after that is all up in the air, and I don't get associated with it. The private detective rose from his seat, puffing away on his cigar in a self-important manner. He strolled up towards Carter with a big smile plastered across his face, his cigar pointed upwards. And yet you were seen repeatedly with the judge and getting stuff for him and moving stuff around for him. You are connected to a murder investigation, Mr. Carter Willows. Do not deny it. I needed work. He provided it. I don't ask questions. Everything was above board. I even paid taxes on that work. Rather strange, though, for a man who's gone around record claiming that the people involved in the case were against them, and yet you've wound up working for the man who presided over that case. What do you say to that? Carter winced. It was rather complicated and, well, he couldn't really explain it, could he? Life is just like that. It's not that easy. It's not black and white, no. It's all grey, complicated and all that. That it is, but if he could explain what you did for him and offer an excuse as to why you shouldn't be a suspect, and part of a grander scheme of things going on, it would be appreciated. You think I murdered the judge? Why would I go after him? He was providing me work. It doesn't make any sense for me to be part of the case against him. I didn't kill him. I just did some work for him, delivering stuff. You didn't like anyone in that case, as you've reportedly told many people, and even said they were after you. What better way to get rid of a person you think is after you than get close to them? There is also the fact that you know so much about the other juror members and how they died, or how you claimed they might have died. You seem to be well versed in everything about this case. There was more flinching from Carter. He had made an effort to know what had happened to them so that he could protect himself against any such things happening to him. After all, he didn't want to fall victim to the same trap the other victims had sprung on them, did he? All I know, and all the work I did for him, is he wanted me to do was deliver packages he'd made to certain people around town. All sorts of people. Rule was to drop it off at their front door, ring the bell, and walk away. Nothing else. You never looked at anything inside them? No, never. Why? They threatened to kill me if I did. The words were out of his mouth before he'd actually thought about them, and it was not exactly what he wanted to say as he cringed. He should not have said that. Anyway, because it was only partially true, and, well, it made things look bad for him. And now we have the circumstances that might make you part of this murder. He wanted to kill you, so why not kill him instead? It's not true? Anyway, I told you all that I know on this matter. He didn't really want to kill me. It wasn't really... It just felt like it, okay? Can I go now? Sure. Just know that you're now notified as a person of interest in this case, and all information will be forwarded to the state police. I didn't murder the judge. No one said you did, merely that you are part of the investigation to know all about what happened leading up to the events and after the event, just to make sure that we know all that's going on." Carter sneered at this man, since there was little else he could do, and moved towards the door. "In a town full of secrets like most places, you sure want to pick on the guy who's struggling to make ends meet. I bet I'm going to get blamed for this whole thing, since nobody likes people like me." The private detective didn't respond, and so Carter opened the door and went out, slamming the door behind him. Having no way to get back to town, since the gunman had forced him here had left, he was facing at least an hour or so, or two walk back. So Carter set out to do exactly that. His legs were already tired from all of the walking he'd been doing recently. And so time passed as it felt like he kept going onwards into darkness as he made his way back towards town. Not that there would be anything open at this late hour, but he felt like he could at least scrounge around the dumpsters, mostly undisturbed, when he got there. The streetlights that dotted the main road of town and the town itself became a welcome sight after that hour had passed. The trek into town was much easier, and he stepped lighter due to being able to see where he was headed now. It felt good to think of something else, like the dumpster filled with food behind the grocery store, which is precisely where he found himself after his trek had ended, trying to get the lid opened while dealing with the lock and chains. Those had been haphazardly thrown on and not really fully attached, but were still there. He had mostly managed to get it open when a flash of light warned him that he was not alone. "Put your hands in the air, sir." Carter glanced at his hands, which were holding up the lid of the dumpster to keep it open. Therefore, they were already up. "They are up in the air." This was met by a moment of silence. "Then step away from the dumpster and no sudden movement." "If I do that, the lid is going to drop and make a lot of noise. Can I just lower it softly?" "Why do you want to do that?" "I just said, so the lid doesn't drop to make a bang noise when it hits, where it rests against the metal. If it makes a grand old noise, you might decide that I've fired a gun, since it was a loud noise, and loud noises equal gunshots, and that'll give you a chance to shoot at me." The deputy, as he glanced over his shoulder, was nodding along, hand reaching for his gun, since Carter wasn't doing as he was told to do. This was leading to a standoff for a second, while he looked at the deputy trying to see if he got what was being said. There was little indication of such an event happening, so he let go of the lid and took several steps back with his arms held as high as he could. The cover of the dumpster came smacking down with a twang. "That was the dumpster, not me." The deputy had his gun out and ready with it, pointed towards Carter, who was waving his hands high up in the air. He knew this wasn't going to do anything, but dear God, he was ready to try anything to stay alive. "Stop moving around, you criminal." "Not a criminal." "Then what were you doing in the dumpster diving with, which is against the town and this county's ordinances?" "Trying to survive and feed myself for the next few days. What else would I be doing around here?" "Stealing, which is why I have to place you under arrest, which is what you were doing, because that's what you keep doing, Carter, Willows. Keep your hands up and don't make any sudden movement." Deputy Mark began approaching slowly and cautiously by pushing one foot in front of forward and keeping it against the ground. Then he would drag his other foot up to meet that one. A slow, agonizing process that made it take a few minutes before the cop reached him, while Carter spent this entire time wanting to put his hands down, since they were getting a bit tingly and tired. "I have no weapons, and I'm not a threat to you." That's what all criminals would say. No, that's what anyone says if they feel threatened by a cop. "I'm not threatening you. I don't have anything against you, Carter, and that's all the more reason to be suspicious of you, since you keep saying all this." By this time, Officer Mark had gotten to him and pulled Carter's wrist behind his back and slapping cuffs onto his wrists. A moment later, he was feeling up and down Carter as he was patting him down to make sure that the no weapons thing was true. "Don't I get my rights read to me?" There was no response. "Hey, I deserve my rights." "That only works if you've been charged with something, and I think they're doing away with those things anyway. Supreme Court's being silly like all that, which is good for us cops. Now come on, to the car you go." Carter found himself dragged to the car and doing his best to keep his feet moving to keep up. Pushed inside, Carter did his best to get comfortable, though there were no seatbelts back here, and he doubted he could even manage to get to one with his hands behind his back. Safety for those up front, as he heard the officer click in their belt, but nothing for them back here, and so he braced his legs against the back seat of the driver's car as best he could, and the metal plating that kept them separated. "I've done nothing wrong." "Oh, you know you have. Stop trying to fight it. Nobody believes anything you've ever said, Mr. Willows." The SUV was being backed out of the alleyway with the lights flashing and making an awful racket of noise from the sirens. "At least turn those things off. You don't need 'em." "No can do. Gotta follow sheriff's regulations about transporting criminals." "You haven't officially charged me yet, so how can I be a criminal?" "Don't try fancy talk with me. I have arrested you before and charged you before, Carter Willows. You are a known thief around town, so you get the full treatment." "Thank God I'm known for that instead of other things." "Oh, don't worry. Everyone else around here considers you a crazy man. I mean, you do go on about the judge and the criminal case all the time to anyone who will listen. Thankfully, no one listens." Carter, though, was busy trying to move about the seat, since it was stiff and had no cushioning to it. He was listening and frowned. That wasn't true at all. He didn't tell everyone. "What are you talking about? I don't do that." "You told the nosiest person in town and you expected them to remain quiet?" "The only people I've told are the ones I trust. I didn't tell any busybody anything." The officer shrugged as they drove a short distance to the police station. The quiet and dark police station lobby greeted them, but a few minutes later. Deputy Officer Mark led Carter through the space towards the back, where a prison door holding cell stood, behind which were the holding cells which Carter knew, but did not want to go to. He didn't resist much, but he still tried to hold himself back from being brought in there. "Come on, Carter, no one is probably in there. Our town is quiet enough as is." "Why am I being thrown in there if I'm not under arrest?" "It's to hold you while the proper papers can be processed in the morning. Don't you worry about it. You'll get a nice night's sleep, and I can throw in some snacks in there for you, so you can have some food." Carter found himself in a cell, all alone in a spacious space, intended for many more people. Why it was so big for an area that never saw much crime or arrest was a question, but he guessed that the cops had to spend money somewhere, and so they spent it here. Officer Mark was soon back pushing a few bags of chips and a bottle of water through the bars for him. "Why are you doing this, officer? Isn't it usually ignored when this kind of thing happens? I know of a couple of people who occasionally do this kind of thing." "With what has happened around here lately? Murder of a judge and the church thing? Yeah, no criminals escaping justice when bad things are happening all around us. You think the townspeople are going to put up with a little crime from you?" Officer Marks studied him for a second before departing to deal with some other matters, likely paperwork about him. Carter quickly set on the food and drink before finding a corner in the room to sleep in. When morning came, an officer Carter wasn't entirely familiar with woke him and brought him to Sheriff Wilton's office. The sheriff sat in their chair, smoking a cigar, looking worn down, tattered, and with a few bandages on his face, doing all they could to hold back whatever wounds were hidden behind them. The morning's humidity did no favors, and it was likely going to be hot out. "Sheriff, I must protest my arrest last night. I was doing nothing wrong." "You know you were doing the wrong thing. Always do. And for that you had to be put in jail. For 1 day. You're probably not going to be charged with anything. Just look at it as getting free food and a nice spot to sleep in. And I'm willing to overlook this entire thing." "You mean for a price, of course." Carter was shaking his head now. He was not stupid. He could already sense in the air that there was a deal to be made. "Well, I just need to know what you know about the judge and what happened during the case for which you are a member of." Now everyone wants to know about that. I've been trying to get someone interested in it and what I have to say forever, but no. It's all gossip and rumors from a madman, and who wants to listen to a madman until it comes falling into their lap? Wilton offered a smile, though it was a rather weak one. Well, now there's a murder happening in the area, and it isn't just some madman declaring that today is the end of the days. You're a criminal who was associated with a criminal. If you could talk, it would be appreciated. So it only matters when there's a murder going on. You could have helped stop that murder in the first place if you knew what I had to say. The sheriff pointed towards a seat across from him that he should sit on, and he would listen to all he had to say. Carter looked at it. The chair was normal enough, but since it was a cop offering it, one should be suspicious of it, he figured. Idly, he moved a few steps over towards it, but didn't sit as he studied it further. Well, now, to me, that says you know at least something that has happened here and what has gone on in that case. I don't know what you're talking about. As I told the state police hound dog private eye guy, I know nothing other than I delivered a few packages for the judge, and that the case, which I was a jury member of, was suspicious because there seemed to be some sort of rapport with people. Oh, the packages, yes, I remember that. There were more than a few, and you even delivered 2 to me. I may have, yes, what of it? Well, since you did bring it up, and it wasn't what I was searching for, but we're going down that road. Talk about it. Inside was criminal content which could be used against me to make me do things. That would make you, sir, a partner to blackmail. Carter shrugged. He had no idea what was in the boxes, truly. He'd been handed them and didn't address without comment about them, and told specifically not to look inside. Look, I know that DePercy was up to something, since whenever I went out to his guest home, there were always lots of boxes sitting around that place, and they wanted them delivered, and that's what I did. Did you ever see the addresses of these boxes, or what was inside them, or anything about them? Well, on the boxes that he didn't have me deliver, yeah, I saw some stuff, mostly on the boxes, his home address, and I think I saw parts of a return address to South America, but couldn't really tell. Did you know he was working with organized crime? With a quick, firm shake of his head no, Carter found himself swaying about. He didn't like this one bit, and it made him feel like there was more going on that he should know about, but he'd been failed to be told about until now, potentially. Why do you think his main home was surrounded by guards and out on the bayou? No one lives out there without a reason, and his was to help criminals from all appearances. Is that what got him killed? Like I said, Sheriff, I don't know much about him. He didn't really talk to me. He gave me a job, and then I went on my way. No, what you doing your jobs is probably what got him killed. Now completely caught off guard, Carter found himself sitting down unintentionally and looking about the many pieces of paper that were framed in nice picture frames. All of them appeared to be merits and certificates of some sort, but his attempt to concentrate on help him sort out his thoughts wasn't working, nor was it allowing him to concentrate on what they were saying. What do you mean? I mean what I said, the packages that found their way to someone who didn't like what they showed. This is what our little investigation has found out so far. It appears, according to the government agency, that someone got in touch with their killer and sent him on his way towards the judge. Well, then that has nothing to do with me. I was merely a delivery agent for him. Oh, it does. He's not willing to say it yet, from what we can tell. And since you have intimate knowledge, you are being placed under protective care. Carter shot up out of the chair and looked about it as the door to the office opened, and in walked a man in a black suit. He looked to him to be very government-looking. Who are you? I'm Agent Victor, and I work for the government. And you, I take it, are Carter Willows. With the agent still standing in the door, the window was the only way out. It, though, had bars over it which made escape nigh impossible, not without at least a bunch of distraction, and he didn't have time for that. Carter then looked desperately about. "Mr. Willows, calm down. We aren't going to harm you. We want to keep you safe and know what you know." "Of course you would say that, Sheriff. Why wouldn't you say something as asinine as that? This is a trap. You're gonna kill me." "Why would it be a trap, sir?" "I don't know. Why do you want me?" "Because someone out there managed to push the right buttons on a person who came to kill the judge. We fear the same might happen to you. And you do claim that that's happened to several of the jurors on the case that you were on, did you not? Do you not?" "How? Why?" Carter had backed away into a corner of the room, holding his hands up with the two fingers crossed in the form of a cross in front of him. He wasn't doing anything, but it felt like maybe it would keep them away. "This is all mischievous bullshit. I know nothing, and no one would want to kill me." "You're willing to take that chance after all the talk you've done, and whoever wants to kill you is certainly out there. Whoever killed the judge is certainly still out there. But if you don't want to, I can't force you. It's all fine by me. I think I'll be seeing you soon, Sheriff Wilton." Victor moved out of the door, with Carter finding himself in hot pursuit. He did stop at the door for a moment, but the sheriff merely waved him on. He didn't want to deal with him anymore. This Agent Victor had stepped out into the morning sun, which was beating down in the hot day. Carter was on his tail, looking about carefully for any signs of someone out to get him. The road was mostly empty of any activity aside from a few cars heading wherever they were going. "You're rather jumpy for a person who thinks they aren't in any danger." "I know cops and I know everyone around here. They're only interested in their own good, and if their own good means they gotta knock somebody out, they'll do it." "And you aren't interested in your own good? What does that mean you're doing right now? Just looking about?" The thought caused Carter to lurch to the side and about as if hit by something, since his mind hadn't gone in that direction. Worst of all, it was true. He hadn't really thought what he was doing was so similar to what he was claiming everyone else was doing. "Well, I'm the only person here who's gonna look out for me, so it is okay for me to do just about that." He eyed the agent and just nodded along, a humid, sad smile. "Fair. Did you deliver a package from the judge to a preacher, by the way?" "Oh, which one?" "The Bayou one or the one who was recently killed?" "Yes, to both." "Interesting. Did you know that the Church of Saints has been linked to bribery and theft?" "I say this because the package you delivered to the preacher was also discovered, and its contents are incriminating towards you as well." Carter felt like he'd been hit by a sucker punch of a blow that he couldn't see, and with the way he gasped, all of his air felt like it was just trying to escape. This was not good at all. Despite what he'd said, he had of course seen what was in some of those boxes, and the fact that he'd been working at the Church of Saints at least a couple of times to help customers. Well then, you don't really need me, do you?" "Well, we don't, but we would rather you stay alive to talk about what you know. It is better when stuff can be corroborated, so to speak, by the people who know them. Whoever got the judge murdered is looking to destroy this whole scheme they'd created. From the gangs that are running into the town, to the blackmail, and to the dealing with the hospital in there, and the collection agency. It's all linked together, but you already knew all of that, and it is why you were assigned to the jury." "If I happen to know stuff, though?" "You could be of use to someone who wants to know what it is that is going on. That is, of course, your option." Carter came towards the agent, studying him carefully and trying to pick his way around his own words. There was no need to tell all he knew right away. After all, the cop worked for the government. If there was a group he trusted the least, it was probably them. "What if I told you the priest out on the bayou has connections with the judge and the killer, and the preacher at the Church of Saints. The agent shrugged and didn't look the least bit surprised, which was annoying. Carter had hoped to catch him off guard so he wouldn't have to tell him all he knew. It wouldn't be surprising, all things considered. But what kind of a connection? We already knew that he went out to the preacher's church. We already knew that there was some sort of connection there. We have a computer that was given to the preacher containing a list of information which has been gone over. What have you got? A gang. You have a gang that you're a part of or that you know about? What is this gang? The agent looked rather stiff because he suddenly noticed something off in the distance. The agent's hand went towards his waist as he eyed it. Carter kept his gaze on it as well, but only saw the slow-moving vehicle of some sort. It didn't seem all that bad to him, so he sort of almost turned back. Counterfeiters and blackmailers who run out on the far coast. Preacher was one of them, and I'm willing to bet the killer ran in the same circles as the preacher. Yeah, we already called the killer's boss, who was supposed to be the gang leader. Didn't get us far. What else have you got? And, by the way, get behind my vehicle if you will. What? Why? Someone has decided to shoot at us. The SUV suddenly sped up as the windows rolled down, and out came 2 handguns, taking shots at them as they passed by at high speed. Agent Victor had his own pistol out and moved to get behind his vehicle while trying to get a shot on the moving SUV. Why is this happening to me? Carter had frozen in place, staring at the side of the vehicle as it was hurrying its way past. He was watching the flashes of the pistol and hoping that none of them would hit him. He wanted to jump or fall to the ground to protect himself, but found his body refused to move. The squeal of tires soon faded, and he looked about the place, as it suddenly turned into a flurry of activity. The police emerged from the station. Agent Victor had rushed over and grabbed him, and began pushing him towards the car. It was all madness, and his body still wasn't really responding to him. Are you all right? I think so. Carter was roughly pushed into the back of the car, where he began methodically looking himself over. As far as he could tell, nothing was wrong with him. The door had opened to the front, and Victor had clambered into the driver's seat. What was all that? I assume that it was the gang you were telling me about. Maybe somebody else, maybe not. We'll find out. The vehicle was quickly started and put into gear, with them hurrying down the road. The thing is that what I know is that the preacher had something to do with the judge. There were a lot of threats back and forth between them, and money was changing hands between the other preacher to get to that preacher or something. It was all rather complicated. And you know this how? I stole a bunch of documents from both of them. What was supposed to be in those boxes that I was delivering? The agent briefly glanced back at Carter and was trying to discern how much of that was the truth. It seemed to be truthful somewhat, and Carter did put on his best innocent-looking face. Mind telling me what those files were? I can get to safety if I do? Even if you don't want to, you're getting it, since someone shot at you. Kidnap? You're kidnapping me then. No, nothing of the sort. Taking you to a place where you can freely talk about all you know. You're taking me to prison, aren't you? Carter reached for the door handle to the side even though the car was moving and found that there was no door handle to grab. Well, that might be a safe spot. No, that isn't where you're going. We have a place out on the bayou that should keep lookers away from anyone. Carter found himself concentrating hard on the agent who looked vaguely familiar to him. He'd seen him before, but where? In town? That was a possibility, but it didn't feel right to him. No, it was elsewhere. Around the area. Do I know you, sir? Carter had given up on trying to get out and was just studying the face in the rearview mirror. What do you mean? Have we ever met before this whole situation? No, I don't think so. He examined the agent that much harder. The information was right on the tip of his brain, but wouldn't come out. What was it? Where was it? He'd seen him. Had he seen him? I think I have. Where before? Where? Well, I have been around the States, so it isn't impossible to have come across me. I've never met you, though, before. The agent kept throwing glances into the rearview mirror, studying him as much as he could as Carter studied him back. To combat this, Carter slid so that he was hidden a bit behind the seat to try and cut off what view of him while he tried to remember. I don't think that is it. It's got to be around town. Well, it isn't a big deal, is it? The words "bayou" and "safe space" kept tugging at Carter's mind. It snapped into place. I got it. I saw you at the judge's place. Maybe the night he was murdered, maybe a day or two before. But you were definitely there. End of Part 9 of A Judge, a Jury, and a Sheriff. Thank you for listening.